Now, some breaking news for you. Today, it has just been announced by the Foreign Secretary, Lord Cameron, on a tour of South America, that Britain is imposing sanctions on 6 people who ran the Arctic penal colony, where Alexei Navalny, the opposition leader in Russia, died last week. Those sanctions were something that David Cameron talked about a little bit earlier, saying that he wanted to get allies to sanction as well. But, of course, huge range of sanctions already on Vladimir Putin and many of his governments and his oligarch chums. But, of course, this is now on 6 people running the Arctic penal colony, where Alexei Navalny died. Many believe him to have been the victim of a murder by people ordered by Vladimir Putin. Well, Jacob Rees-Mogg said that the Russian ambassador to the UK should be expelled from the country after the death. We're going to be talking to a, well, I would say, let's say, a propagandist for Vladimir Putin in just a couple of moments. But Benedict Spence still with me. Should we expel the Russian ambassador?
No. Actually, if we haven't expelled him for the war that's going on with
Ukraine.
Ukraine...
There is that, isn't there? I think invading Ukraine.
Yeah, actually, I think, if I'm going to be brutally honest here, everybody knew that Alexei Navalny was dead. If not physically, he was going to die in prison. It was just a matter of time. So I don't think that you can expel him, for the ambassador, for that, because, as I say, it was a fait accompli. It was a question of when and how they did it. To be like, oh, now that he's dead, rather than, simply imprisoned for the rest of his life, that's beyond the pale, when there is currently a war going on in Ukraine, which we are helping to fund the defence of that country. I just think it's such a weak, tokenistic thing. Obviously, we've kept the ambassador, we've allowed them to stay for a reason. That doesn't change because somebody who was never going to be released from prison and is now dead is dead.
Yes, again, the diplomatic niceties of this don't actually change things, and keeping those lines of communication open perhaps more useful. Talking about communication, of course, we had a statement, within hours of the announcement of Alexei Navalny's death in penal colony in Siberia, from his widow, Yulia Navalny. She was speaking at the Munich Security Conference and has also tweeted and made statements on video since, basically saying, Vladimir Putin murdered my husband. Now, she lost her Twitter, now X, account for that. It was suspended for saying this, and after a storm of protest, it has been allowed again. Now, I don't know, we expected Vladimir Putin to sue? I don't know. Bearing in mind that this is a man who'd been killed with, attempted murder, of Novichok in his underpants on a flight at one point. We know Putin has ordered the murder of pretty much everybody who has ever spoken out against him, certainly political opposition leaders. It is not a big stretch. This is not a sort of, if Keir Starmer died, we wouldn't go, oh, he's obviously been killed by Rishi Sunak, because there's no form. But with Putin, there is form.
Equally, though, the timing of it doesn't make a great deal of sense, given that actually, as the war has gone on, the Russian state has become a lot less subtle about getting rid of people that it doesn't like. And so equally, this could have been a situation where, almost like a sort of a Thomas Becket, who will rid me of this turbulent place, somebody took it upon themselves to do it. It might not necessarily have been on the direct orders of Vladimir Putin, but we all know what the fate of Navalny was going to be. He was never going to be released from that prison, be that living into his old age and dying of natural causes, or being bumped up at some point. That was his fate.
We know the conditions in these Siberian gulags, is what they are absolutely atrocious. He was kept in solitary confinement for most of the time he was there, since 2021. He'd been seen a couple of days before his death in a video call with his wife. And there was a lot of talk that his spirit couldn't be broken, but he was kept minus 30, minus 50 degree temperatures. The claim from his wife, Yulia, was that he had been killed with Novichok, which was been used many other times, we know, by Putin's acolytes. Now there are claims that he may well, because of bruising on his body, although his body's not been released, there have been reports of this, his body's not been seen by his widow, his wife, or his lawyers, that he would be kept out in the cold. One of the KGB modus operandi for murder is that can't be detected, is that he had been kept outside for a few hours in the abject freezing cold, enough to kill a lot of people on its own, and then punched in the heart and the chest. And apparently this was part of their training, the KGB, and that the bruising on his chest would suggest that this was the case. What I've never understood, I've always found absolutely fascinating. We spoke to Bill Browder, of course, enemy number one for Putin, is why Putin wants this sort of this plausible deniability.
Well, that's exactly my point. I think that it doesn't make a great deal of sense. It wouldn't actually make a lot of sense to use Novichok in that situation, because actually the means are there to kill somebody. I know it sounds a bit grotesque. The means are there to do it without having to resort to
But is that part of the game playing that he does?
Potentially. But equally, I'm not really sure what else there is in terms of opposition, unless there is internal opposition that Putin... And we've seen this with the Prigozhin attempt at a coup. There is lots of factionalism within the Russian government. So perhaps this is a demonstration to other people within the government itself to stay in line, because otherwise, if he just wanted to bump off a political opponent, well, they've done that lots of times.
They've done that. I mean,
by pushing people out of windows. They literally
push
do
out of window and people being shot outside the Kremlin.
Yeah.
All the CCTV cameras and lights go out. Someone is shot. I mean, it's just extraordinary. Very sadly, we're not going to be able to talk to our guest some tech problems. Sergei Markov, who has very much said, you know, this isn't down to Putin. He won't be responsible. He won't be responsible for this. Very much an apologist for Vladimir Putin, a propagandist, some would say. There's a lot of talk about more sanctions, what more action could be taken. Realistically, look, you know, what action can we take? We're already... By the way, we're seeing the Russian economy still growing despite all the sanctions we've got. We're in recession. The Russian economy is growing by more than 3%.
Well, yeah, but that's because actually we relied for a very long time on Russia's natural resources. We've cut off our access to a lot of those. And
they're still selling them to the Indians and everyone else.
The Russians have gone, fine. They've turned from the West and they've gone to the East, and the East have gone, what's that? At a discount? Fine, we'll take that. Oh, what, this little war? Oh, don't worry about that. That's fine. So, yes, India, Iran, Pakistan, China, all of these places, they're having a great time, actually, because they're buying discounted stuff, and it means that the Russian economy is able to stay on its feet. But also, Russia is not a completely useless country. It has spent the last couple of years re-augmenting its economy to take the pressure of all
and this is the
situation.
thing, we're not doing this.
No, we're not.
I mean, this you know, we talk about the failed Trident missile test like last month that's been revealed today. This thing, we are not preparing. We didn't prepare for Ukraine being invaded, even when Vladimir Putin, wrote articles and gave speeches saying that he didn't believe Ukraine was an independent sovereign state and amassing 120,000 troops on the border. And it was a complete surprise to the experts when he invaded. Everything seems to be a surprise to us. And so many military people who get the opportunity to speak out are saying, we need to prepare for war. There is going to be more war. Why are we shut down to this?
Oh, again, I think we just like to believe the idea that it doesn't work. But, you know, the key difference is now Ukraine is having to rely on arms from the rest of the world. Russia doesn't have to do that anymore because it has prepared itself to take that kind of strength.
And they've got help from China.
It does buy stuff from China, but actually it is itself manufacturing the ammunition. They have no shortage of ammunition or tanks anymore, because their economy, having initially expected a short war, has now picked up the slack of an ongoing conflict.
They're on a war footing, which we are not. And again,
And sadly, the Ukrainians don't have the capacity for because they are the subject of them.
Indeed. No doubt we'll be talking about all that and more. The second anniversary of that invasion on a Saturday, of course.